Hey guys, another video for our Wheels in Japan playlist. So, in a recent video, I was in this dodgy loaner car and mentioned that I was in the dodgy loaner car, and one of our PayPal supporters asked me about it and asked me about having a car in Japan and buying a car in Japan. We've sort of talked about stuff like that in the past, but he was specifically asking about my situation with this car and so on. So I thought it might be of interest to him, and maybe someone else might be interested to hear how this has come about, and might give you some ideas too for options, those of you who are thinking about getting a car in Japan. So first of all, probably, as mentioned in previous videos, if you live in the city in Japan, you know, if you're in Tokyo, Osaka or Nagoya or one of the big cities, you probably don't need a car. In fact, they're probably just a hassle because you've got to pay huge money for parking, and you don't sort of need it, the public transport being as good as it is, you know. But obviously we're out here in the countryside. I drive quite a lot. I drive about 500 kilometers a week. So I drive quite a lot, mostly because most of the places that I have to go to are pretty far. So it tends to clock up a few kilometers every week. Well, 500, so about 25,000 Ks a year. So what's happened for me is about over 20 years ago, I was weighing up the car situation, because what I used to do is I used to use train to get around, and then when I wanted to go on a big trip somewhere, I'd rent a car, which is sort of similar to what we do now. We have these K cars, which is these little cars that are like 600cc, 630cc engines, which is like a motorcycle engine. And usually it's sort of good enough, you know, they're pretty good little cars. And as talked about previously, you know, for parking and for getting up and down little streets, and they're the best, you know. So we love the little cars, but if we do go on some big adventure somewhere, in particular if we've got visitors from Australia or something, quite often we have to rent a bigger car. So anyway, I digress. So what happened is 20 plus years ago, when I was weighing up what to do with a car, there was a guy that I sort of friend of a friend who owns a workshop, and he's got a mechanical workshop. He fixes cars, and also he does sell the occasional car, and he sells new cars and second-hand cars occasionally. It's not really his main thing. So when he knew I was weighing up what to do, he said to me, if you just want a K car, well, K car is these small cars below 650 cc's. So they're much simpler. There's a whole heap of reasons. They're smaller, so small streets and parking and everything, but also a normal size car here, you have to register it with the police where it parks, and there's paperwork involved, and it's a lot of faffing around, whereas the K car, you don't have to do all that. So K cars are much simpler, and then the shark end, the 2-year checks that they've got to have is cheaper, and the insurance is cheaper. They're just way better, K cars. So yellow plates, so that silver car you can see heading away from us there with the yellow plate, that's a K car. So that's how you know K cars have got yellow plates. And so he said, if you just want a K car, I can rent you one. And so Ichiman Gosen a month, so that's 15,000 yen a month, which is about $150. And so I said, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So I started doing that, and then I just kept it. It was a Wagon-R, Suzuki Wagon-R, which is our favorite, really excellent car. You can see this car, there's not a lot of headroom in here. This is a Daihatsu, little Daihatsu, but the Suzuki Wagon-R is actually a really boxy little car, which means you've got lots of headroom, so it actually feels quite adequate inside. It's quite big enough inside. So Suzuki Wagon-R, and so 25,000 kilometers a year. So within 4 years, it had about 60,000 kilometers on it when he rented it to me. And see, for him, he would have bought that. He would have probably got that as a trade-in from someone who bought a new car or something. He might have got that for like $2,000 or something, you know. So for him, it's worth it. But for me, a car that was like maybe 4 or 5 years old with 60,000 kilometers on it, is sort of, for me, is virtually like a new car. So I got that from him and just drove that for like 4 years, and put got it up to like 170,000 kilometers on the clock. And for Japanese standards, that's really old, right? So usually, you know, once a car gets to 100,000 kilometers, they go, oh, it's old, you know, it's no good anymore. But for me, they're great. The Suzuki Wagon-R is one of the most reliable cars made, you know, so I had no problems with it at all. But what eventually happened was, was it had a problem with the transmission. It was leaking oil from the transmission, and I gave it to him. And our deal is I pay $150 a month, and he pays the Sharkan, which is that 2 yearly inspection and tax that's got to be paid, and the insurance and any repairs. So anything ever wrong with the car, I just give it to him, he fixes it. It costs me nothing, right? So when I do the math, it makes sense. If I bought a second-hand car every 4 years and paid for all the repairs and the insurance and the Sharkan and everything else, it'd probably cost me more than $150 a month, probably. So for me, it's just easier, you know. So what happened was the first car was after 4 years, transmission started to leak oil. I took it and gave it to him. He worked out that the cost of repairing it, the parts or whatever, and the time to repair it wasn't worth it. So he basically trashed it, which to me, you know, at that stage the car was like 8 years old or something, and it had 170,000 kilometres on it, which in Australia would be like halfway through its life. You know, it'd still have another half of its life left, but in Japan, you know, that's sort of the end of the story for them. So, sorry guys, I don't know where that rattling's coming from, somewhere here. But, so that was the first one. So then he gave me another one. I think the second one was a Honda Life, which is sort of similar to the Wagoneer. It's a Honda, and these cars are amazing. You know, it's like a mid-size motorcycle engine. You know, 630 cc's, tiny little engine, but just really like the weight of the car's light, so the power to weight ratio is really good, and they just go. You know, the highest speed limits on the roads here is 100 kilometers an hour anyway, but I mean, you know, a person could sit on 120 kilometers an hour all day on the freeway, you know, and particularly the Wagoners, the manual ones have 5-speed transmission, so they're just excellent, you know, and they can sit on 120 kilometers an hour and not be working, you know, sitting at like 4,000 RPM. So excellent cars. So yeah, the second one was a Honda Life. That was pretty similar, and then something happened to it after about 4 years. You know, it had the same thing. It had about 170,000 kilometers on the clock, and something happened to it, and he just wrote it off. And then I think I've had 4, and the most recent one was a Suzuki Wagoneer, and that's the one probably I've had the longest. You guys have the one that I'm normally making these videos in. That's the Suzuki Wagoneer. And then recently what happened was it started to get really hot here. It's been like 36 degrees, 37 degrees, and really humid. And the aircon would work and be nice and cool, and then suddenly it would stop working and get really warm. And then, you know, I'd turn it off for a while and turn it back on, and it'd be cool again, and then it'd start getting warm. And I just thought it was the gas. I thought the aircon needed regassing. So I called him up and I told him what was happening. I said, I'm guessing it's the gas. And he said, yeah, it could be. So I took it to him, and he gave me this loaner. This was 2 weeks ago. He gave me this loaner car, said he can drive that, which is this Daihatsu. I don't like it. It's curved. The roof's curved, so there's not enough headroom, and you know, I don't like it as much as the Wagoneer. But it's all right. The aircon's really good, which is important at the moment. But he gave me this loaner, and I thought it was just going to be for the afternoon. And then he called the next day and said, no, we're not going to fix the Wagoneer, which is. I mean, that car, I really look after my cars, you know. It's a 5-speed manual, and I really looked after the transmission and the clutch. It never needed any work on the transmission or the clutch because I always looked after it. The engine was always good, always started first time, always ran really well. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it at all, except the aircon's broken, obviously, and he just doesn't reckon, because it's like I don't know how old it is now, it might be 7 years old or something, and it's got 170,000 kilometers on it. So his thinking is that it's not worth fixing. So he's just gonna trash it. They recycle them, empty the oil and the fuel out of it, and then just crush it and melt it down. You know, and that's the end of it. Which to me seems terribly wasteful. I mean, in Australia, you know, we had cars. I had one friend who had a Nissan Pulsar that had 500,000 kilometres on it, right? So in Australia, that's not an unusual thing, you know, but here, once a car gets over 100,000, its days are numbered. So apparently he's got another Wagoneer that's another 5-speed manual again, and it's 3 years old, and it's got 50,000 kilometres on it, or it might be less, might have been 30,000 kilometres on it. So he said a week or so ago that he had that, and then I was going to get that, do some stuff. They've got to put a navvy in it and stuff. So to our PayPal buddy that our PayPal pal that asked about the car there, that's what's happening with that. And it just, I've done them, you know, now and again I'll do the math when usually at a time of change like this, where, you know, the car's gone and the Wagoner. I always get attached to my cars too because I spend a lot of time in them. You know, I worked out the other day 500 k's a week, so 25,000 k's a year. So in the last 20 years I've done 500,000 kilometers of driving around Japan, and I get sort of attached to the cars. So every time one dies and he says, you know, going to get me another one, I do the math again and think, is it, you know, should I go and buy a second-hand car? But it just, for me, it doesn't add up. You know, if you look at the cost of buying a second-hand car, and then the shark in every 2 years, and the insurance and the repairs, and you know how long that car's going to last, and at the end of it, it's worth nothing. You know, you're trying to sell a second-hand car here. You know, my wife had a Nissan. What was it? Nissan. I think it's called in the UK. I think they call it a Micra. But she had this Nissan. It wasn't too bad, but actually it had the same problem. Its aircon was broken, and it was going to be about $600 to fix the aircon. And we asked the car dealers how much they'd give us, and they said $300. And again, there was nothing wrong with that car, just the aircon. Everything else was fine. It was a really good car. $300, they said, and that's about what we ended up getting for it, was $300. And that's sort of the deal. So if you buy a second-hand car here and drive it, put some kilometers on it, you're not going to get anything for it. In fact, quite often what you have to do is you have to pay someone to take it off your hands. That's often the case, is that they'll say, no, we can't get anything for that car. So if we take that car from you, you've got to give us, you know, $200 or $300 for us to take the car off you, because they've got to pay to have it removed, and then eventually, obviously, they'll get money. Someone will get money for the metal value from it. But yeah, that's sort of similar to a new house, similar to pretty well anything in Japan. You know, same as the second-hand shop. Someone asked about that recently when we were showing some old stuff at the back of the old farmhouse, and someone said, you know, can you do garage sales and things? They don't have garage sales here. They have sort of flea market type things, and they do have recycle shops, second-hand shops, but most stuff they won't even buy it off you. I mean, we've had that before, where we've had stuff that we thought was still worth something to somebody, and they just go, no, not interested. Or they'll offer you, you know, you'll take something in that could be worth $100 anywhere else, and they'll offer you $2 for it. It's just because Japanese people don't like second-hand stuff. They like used stuff. So it has no value. So same as the houses, you know, a brand new house that's worth $300,000, brand new, 20 years later is valued at zero or less than zero. And same as with these cars. You know, once they get over 100,000 Ks, 150,000 Ks on them, they're sort of not worth anything to them. So anyway, in answer to our PayPal buddy, that's why I didn't write it down. Some of these questions that we get asked sometimes, if you took the time to write it down, it would be pages and pages of very uninteresting stuff. Whereas like this way, I can just say the uninteresting stuff. So hopefully it gives some people some ideas. I mean, out here in the countryside, it's sort of a car is much more useful and much less hassle. In the city, it's a hassle. You know, the parking, you can pay... You could pay $10 a day for parking in the city, or more. So you know that's $300 a month just to park your car. You know, it's a hassle. It's a hassle. But out here in the countryside, it's different. You know, we sort of need the cars out here. I mean, my two dojos. Well, I'm sort of heading in the direction of one of the dojos that I go to, and you can see it's a bit of a drive. You know, it's like a 30-minute drive. The other dojo I go to is 30 minutes in the other direction. So, you know, pretty well everywhere we go to do whatever we do is a little bit of a drive. But it's a fairly low stress drive. That's the other good thing about being out here in the countryside. So it's up to the individuals to decide, you know, if you find yourself living in Japan, you decide if you need a car or not. You know, the first few years I lived here, I got by with just catching the train where I wanted to go and a bit of walking around my town. And then when I wanted to go on some adventure somewhere, I used to rent a car, and that financially that actually made a lot of sense, because that meant I had zero car cost, except for a few times a year when I wanted to go somewhere with friends or something and rented a car for a couple of days. And yeah, that was the cheapest option. That was the cheapest option, but everybody has to work it out for themselves as far as cost and convenience and that sort of thing. You know, what the best thing is for you. You know. So anyway, that's enough of that. So to our PayPal pal, that was the answer to that question. That's what goes on with the car. So I'm guessing sometime you got to be patient here. Sometimes you get these things that just seem to take forever to resolve. You know, that guy told me, I mean, I thought it was going to be, you know, a day at first, then I thought it was going to be a week. Now it's 2 weeks, and it heard nothing about this car, but apparently it's going to come, and I'll be back on the road again, and probably all going well, that'll probably be again another 4 years, 5 years with that car until it dies. Something happens on it dies, and then we'll on to the next one. So as long as this guy keeps this option open to me, I'm going to keep taking it, because for me the math makes a lot of sense. You know, $150 a month all up, including everything, insurance and shark end and repairs and everything. So for me that math makes a lot of sense, you know, instead of buying a car that values to nothing and then paying all those expenses, you know. So anyway, that's more than enough of that. Hope that was of interest to our friend, and also hopefully someone else found that of interest too. Might be a few ideas and a few thoughts for other people who are considering getting a car in Japan, you know, weighing it up, what their options are. That renting options, I don't know anyone else that does that. I think I was a bit lucky there, just through my connection that I happen to know this guy, and he made me that offer. It's not a real common thing, that all-inclusive renting thing. I haven't heard of anyone else doing it, so it might not be an option for other people. But the difference between doing it yourself, like buying the car yourself and paying all the costs, and doing it my way wasn't hugely different. I worked out it was a bit cheaper my way and less money up front with this $150 a month thing. But you can imagine if you live sort of like an area like this, that's probably what you'd spend if you bought a car yourself, second-hand car yourself, and did it yourself. Probably about $150 a month, and then gasoline. Obviously, the amount of driving I do spend a bit of gasoline. These little cars are really efficient, but 500 k's a week's a lot of driving too. So I do burn through a lot of gasoline. So anyway, that's enough of that. More videos coming soon.